Welcome into the latest edition of the Stealing with the Boys podcast. I am your host, Junnie Riddle, here along with my boys,
Jawuan Williams
and Coach Campbell.
Fellas, the Steelers took their first loss of the 2024 campaign. We were all in attendance at Lucas Oil Stadium as the Colts took down the Steelers 27-24 in what I would honestly describe as quite a brutal loss. So I am very familiar with Indianapolis. I went up there multiple times when I was a young kid, some to watch Steeler games, some with my Little League team. I actually got to play on that field before. No bragging rights or anything. But either way, it was a fun experience playing on an NFL. Well, I have a lot of experience at the stadium, so I've got to see the locker room, stuff like that. So I've been there plenty of times. But it was your all's first time going to Indy. Before we kind of get into the game, I always kind of like to discuss the stadiums that we visit. We talked about Atlanta for me and my first time. So, guys, what did you think of Lucas Oil? What did you think of Colts fans? And what did you think of the whole game day environment in general?
Do you want to go?
You got it.
It's actually a really nice stadium. And this is actually my second time going, but this is like my first time going for a football game.
Okay.
But for the most part, like you walk in, it's just there. Like, oh, bam, here goes the field. I'm like, okay, all right. Well, I seen the picture of Peyton Manning. Had to get a picture of that because But overall the atmosphere was cool. I think it was like 60-40 again, just like how it was in Denver. So other than that, I mean, I enjoyed myself. The Colts fans, I'm gonna let you tell that part that I was gonna say, but yeah.
What's that?
I was gonna talk about the incident.
Oh yeah, I thought that was a Steelers fan though.
Nah, it was two of. I thought two of them was Colts fans. The one with the cane was a Steelers fan.
Yeah, there was a group of fans behind us that didn't like us
Didn't
very
enjoy
much.
us standing up, but
no,
third down. Stupid.
We'll get into that here in a minute. But Trey, go ahead. What did you think of the stadium? You mentioned something to me about it before we hopped on.
that's probably a top 3 stadium I've been to, and I've been to a decent amount, but it's kind of built like a barn. Like you walk in, it's just like this huge barn, and there's seats that go all the way up, like a mile up. There's not a bad seat in the house, I feel like, because we were pretty high up there and we could see everything. And Colts fans, I mean, they showed out. They have a weird celebration. I don't really like their celebration.
It actually is milking the cow.
Milking the cow, but they're all right.
That's one of the worst.
It's a bad celebration. Y'all need to work on that.
Touchdown celebrations I've ever seen. I was so confused when they was doing that.
When they started, I don't know, man. But they were cool. I mean, they weren't like super hostile or anything. Kind of chill. And I would say it was probably about 60-40, 70-30 maybe. But no, that was an awesome stadium. That was probably one of my favorite stadiums I've been to, especially an indoor stadium.
So should we get into the controversy?
Yeah, go ahead.
So there
you
was
know best.
So there was a group of older fans behind us, and granted, we are not the wealthiest bunch. I mean, we were in the nosebleeds, 600 level at Lucas Oil Stadium. There's not many stadiums that have a 600 level. We were up in the 600 level, and we weren't towards the bottom. I'll just put it that way. We were up there,
but we still had a great view.
We did. We still had a great view. Loved the seats. It was a blast. Shout out to Jawuan's dad for getting those tickets, by the way. Also, have to say this. We only stood up on third downs. Like we were sitting down in our seats watching the game. There wasn't a lot to stand up for us, to be honest with you, until the end. On third downs, we'd get up, wave the towels. The older couple, or it was two couples behind us, kept making sly comments. So I turned around and I said, "Hey, we're only standing on third downs. We're not trying to get on your nerves." The one guy that was a Steelers fan basically got super flustered with me and started cursing at me and yelling at me and saying how rude I am for standing up on third down at a football game. And I'm just like, and I asked him, I'm like, well, why don't you stand up? And he had a cane, and he's like, it's because I'm crippled. And he yelled at me again and cursed at me. But I was like, thinking in my mind, I'm like, dude, how do you get up to the 600 level? Like, and Lucas Oil is pretty steep. That's why the view is so good, even from up there. It's like, how did you even get up there, and you can't even stand up at a football game that you're in person on third down? So long story short, we didn't stop standing on third down. I didn't care. It actually, like, the guy with the cane was a Steelers fan. Everybody else in his group were Colts fans. But all in all, I think that's just a bad trend of people at football games nowadays.
I feel like that happens at Acrisure too.
No, it did. I told you guys, there was and it wasn't even an old person. It was a young guy with his girlfriend, and it was Steelers versus Ravens. This is back in Big Ben's last year in 2021. I went to that game, and I was standing up. It was like right before halftime or something. Big third down stop the Steelers needed to get, and the guy behind me tapped me. He goes, "Hey man, could you please sit down?" I turned around and I was like, dude, you're at a football game. It's third down. I was like, I drove 9 hours to get here, and I paid over $400 for these tickets. I'm not sitting down. And he didn't say a word. But this guy at the Colts game didn't have that same mentality. He really wanted to fight with me. So
I kept hearing I ignored what the lady was saying behind me, because I kept hearing her saying, like, I'm trying to watch the game. I'm like, me personally, I was just like, I'm just gonna continue to watch the game. But
yeah, Junnie handled it.
Yeah,
and I was respectful about it. I mean, I didn't yell at him. I didn't curse at him. I was like, no, sir. Like, this is what we're doing. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but hey, like, we paid good money to be here too. We had the right to stand up. And honestly, people in front of us were standing up. And so, like, we got to stand up to see too. So it's not my fault that you're in that predicament. Again, sorry for your circumstance, but if you want to see the game and you want to go to the game, maybe you should get some better seats. But either way, that is not the point. That's not why anybody's listening to this podcast. Let's kind of talk about the Colts game. The Colts jumped out to a 17-0 lead early in the first quarter. The Steelers couldn't really do anything in the first half. Well, offensively, defensively. Jawuan, I want to start with you. Your observations of something that you saw about why the Steelers fell into such a hole, and what did you gather from that, and how can they kind of fix that going forward?
2 words: Tomlin game.
Which none of us expected.
Well, I mean, we talked about it last episode that we was all hyped about the game, that as soon as we get hype, it's going to be a Tomlin game. And this is exactly what it was. The defense got hit in the mouth. First play. Even though I thought, the first play after it happened, me and Trey was like, that should have been a pick.
It should have.
Should have been.
Yeah, it should have been.
I went back and watched the film. That Joey Porter Jr. completely mistimed that.
But we just couldn't move the ball. We got beat by Joe Flacco. And it's funny because
It's unbelievable.
I never wanted to hear that ever again.
It's funny because, like, we all was thinking the same thing. Even I was watching Big Ben's podcast, and he even said the same thing. Anthony Richardson wasn't the issue. Him getting hurt and putting Joe Flacco in, somebody that's used to the Steelers in the game, he was the problem. That's who we had to worry about. We didn't blitz for some apparent reason. We kept on being in zone. The zone did not work all game, but we kept on being in zone. No blitzing, no pressure on Joe Flacco. It was just.
And that's what I told Junnie that too. Like, as soon as Richardson went down, it was like, I don't know. I feel like our whole game plan, game plan for Anthony Richardson, somebody that can move, and then Joe Flacco comes in, gets the ball out quick, and just torched us. That's what I have. Our defense got punched in the mouth early and often. Should have had picked the first play, which would have changed the momentum. Our D-line against their interior O-line, I did not think we did very good. I mean, we graded out pretty good, you said, Junnie?
No. I mean, I would say Keanu Benton and Cameron Hayward had decent games, but Ogunjobi, Lowry, all those guys, they none of them played that well at all.
And I also have, the Elliott's strip sack on the second possession could have changed the momentum. We didn't get on that. Queen could have, but did not. But the first half was not good for our defense. They settled down in the second half. But Joe Flacco, man, I mean, he came in. I feel like that was the difference maker. Like, Richardson probably would have made a mistake in the game like he has. He'll look good 2 drives, make a mistake, a big mistake. But as soon as Joe Flacco came in, he wasn't making a mistake.
But my big thing was no pressure. No pressure on him. No, yeah. I didn't. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did y'all see a blitz?
I didn't see much of a blitz, but I also think that just the way that Shane Steichen's offense is, the way that the Colts run their offense, you know, they can do RPOs, read options, those little, you know, bubble screen outs to their athletes, getting them out in space. I think the Steelers were just trying to cover all their bases, and while they're trying to cover all their bases, they basically didn't cover anything because they're trying to guard too much. And it's like, if you're trying to guard all the variables of what could be of the play, then you're leaving a lot of other spots opened up. And for me, I felt like the middle of the field was completely open. Some of the notes that I have, I'm going to be quite blunt about some of these. Patrick Queen played terrible. He played absolutely terrible. He played solid in Atlanta, and I would say he played really good in Denver and at home against the Chargers. But he played terrible. And some of these Ravens fans that have been telling Steeler fans how he's not that good against running football teams, I mean, we saw him play really well against the Chargers, but I think that this offensive line for the Colts is one of the better units in the league. And I just think that, you know, with Queen really struggled to tackle Jonathan Taylor as well. I just think that against a really good line and a really good back, I think that's the worst combination for a player like Patrick Queen. Not trying to say he's a bad player, and I told this to Trey. He's still really good in pass coverage, still really good blitzing, but I mean, this was an eye opener, and this is something that has to get adjusted. I didn't think Ogunjobi got a good push, and the fact that he got a significant amount of more snaps than a guy like Keanu Benton, I just felt like was unacceptable in this game. Keanu Benton's one of the best run stuffers on this front line, and him and Cam Hayward both can make a huge difference. I mean, Keanu had less than 50% of the snaps, really was only in on base, and the Steelers were in nickel for a lot of this game. And so I just don't understand why Keanu Benton can't play that other D tackle position in the nickel package because of how good of a run defender he is, especially against this team. It just didn't make a lot of sense. I don't think any of the inside backers played well. Roberts I don't think he played well. I thought he was getting really abused in like kind of the RPO action, the throws over the middle. They were really targeting him over the middle because we all know that he's not that great in pass coverage. And then Peyton Wilson, I thought, played really well against the run, but again in the pass, Josh Downs and who am I missing here? The receiver that you said sucked at the beginning, Michael Pittman Jr. They were just torching us over the middle. And then lastly, we saw his dad before the game, and we were trying to hype up his dad. But Beanie Bishop is not starting level corner ability at all. Like Beanie Bishop is not ideal at all to be a starter on this defense. I mean, he was getting lost multiple times. He got lost on the Joshua Downs touchdown. I felt like they were abusing not only the inside linebackers in the middle of the field in the pass game, but also just really kind of honing in on Beanie himself, him being the liability that he is at that slot corner position, being an undrafted rookie. Overall, just that area was really bad. But, at the end of the day, it comes down to winning the line of scrimmage, and the Steelers did not do that in this game. So now I kind of want to move towards the offensive side of the ball. The run game in particular with Najee Harris, not good. Not even averaging over a yard per carry. Are we concerned with Najee Harris? Trey, I'll start with you.
Yes, I am concerned with Najee Harris. You saw Patterson come in and excel in his short time coming in. He had 5 carries maybe?
I actually have it. So Patterson did not get a single carry until the 4th drive. Here was that drive, and this is the drive, I'll talk about where this ended. So first play, run for 4 yards. Second play, run for 12. Next play, catch for 14. Run for 11. Run for 9. Run for 10. There were only 3 plays on that drive that did not go to Cordero Patterson. There was a 1-yard toss to Najee Harris. There was the big pass play to Darnell Washington where he got the stiff arm and hurdled a guy. Absolutely awesome. And then the Pickens catch and fumble inside the 5. The rest of it was Cordero Patterson. And until that drive, he did not get the ball whatsoever. And the offense was humming with him. I would argue losing him really, really hurt this team because there was no run element outside of him in this game at all.
Yeah, I agree, man. To see him like do what he did, and Jalen being out that game as well, like I don't know. I feel like Najee's vision is really, really bad. Like even watching the game live, I feel like he had some holes and he was just running into people. Like he could have cut it back a couple times. That toss play needs to be out of the playbook, especially for Najee. But yeah, I'm worried about Najee, and maybe that's why we didn't pick up his 5th-year option.
You want to know what I noticed when I watched the All-22 about this? I don't know about you, Trey, and I don't know if you've noticed this. I don't see a lot of movement on the offensive line when it comes to running with Najee Harris. I feel like it's like, run left. It's kind of like a zone scheme on the blocking. Whereas with Patterson, I was seeing like guards and tackles pulling and trapping and like kind of setting up the run and breaking through and making big holes. I'm starting to think that this might be something that Najee Harris might have an issue with. That it's so simplistic in the run game with him, and I feel like he's so used to being the biggest, fastest, strongest athlete, even when he was at Alabama, that he's just used to running straight into the line and winning at the line of scrimmage with his pure size and speed. And at the NFL, we're not seeing this, and it takes him to adjust and to get into midseason form to him to finally break through. Jawuan, you have always been a big Najee defender, and I feel like none of us are out on Najee. I mean, clearly this is something that he's done year in and year out, start slow, and then midway through the season he catches on and finishes strong. But are you concerned with Najee Harris?
Not to the point that y'all are. I mean, he only had 1 bad game. If you look at the stats, what he had, Atlanta, 20 carries, 70 yards. Denver, 17, 69. Chargers, 18 for 70. I mean, last game, he just had 13 for 19. Now, that was a bad game. But, I mean, I'm not going to go off the limb and say, like, I'm concerned about him. If it's constantly like that, like a consistent bad performance, like 15 carries, 15 yards, 15 carries, 20 yards, then I'll be more, like, concerned. But right now, it was just a bad game. It was just a bad game for everybody overall.
No, I agree. And I feel like part of it, like, especially in the first half, our offense was just, like, so conservative. They would just they were running the ball almost the first 3 downs. Barely had a pass game in the first half. I mean, I don't know how many attempts Justin had in the first half, but it wasn't enough to, like, that's one thing I want to see more of. We need to open up the offense, and we need to pass the ball to open up the run game instead of running the ball 3 downs, trying to open up the pass game from there. I feel like we just need to open it up, let Justin do his thing. He looked good this game, threw the ball well. Just need to see more of that early in the game.
He was 10 of 13 for 120 at half, and I think that we looked at that at halftime, and we were all kind of shocked, like we couldn't believe he already had 120 yards. It didn't feel that way.
Yeah.
But again, when the second half came, the offense opened up. Justin looked electric at times. I mean, 313 yards passing, 1 passing touchdown to Pat Freiermuth, and he also had, 50-plus rushing yards and
55.
two touchdowns. So
made history.
Three total touchdowns in this game. Looked really, really good. So we've been talking a lot of negatives. I feel like Justin and his performance, especially in the second half, was a positive. So what were some of your all's takeaways from him in the second half, and how can he build upon this, and how can Arthur Smith build upon this when calling plays and trying to maybe open up the offense a little bit more earlier.
I feel like that's what I was just saying. Like, just open up the offense more. You see he can do it. He brought us all the way back from, 17 down. It was 17-3 at half?
Yeah.
Yeah.
17-3.
Yeah, like, he brought us all the way back, and, like, we had a shot with our last drive. Like, just open up the offense from the beginning. This is a game that, coming up, this is a game that we can open up the offense. I feel like we're playing against not so great of a defense that's banged up. I think we just need to see him open it up. I think Justin will thrive. He thrived in the second half, build off that momentum, and, let him throw the ball.
He is single-handedly the reason that we came back. I think what we look past, because most of the time, media, Steeler Nation, we're trying to see like flaws when it comes to Justin Fields. Like, oh, what can he not do that, we need to throw Russ in because Russ can do this. But I think the point I'm trying to make is us not opening the playbook is not really showing us Fields' full potential. And I think in the second half, all you had to do was open up the playbook and you see what he can do. He flourishes. He had two rushing touchdowns and one throwing touchdown, the Pat Firemouth. He made history with that's my biggest thing that I got from this game. I didn't even know until I actually looked at it. He made history as the first Steelers running back. I'm not running back. The first Steelers quarterback to have 300 plus yards, 50 plus rushing yards, 2 touchdowns rushing, and one passing touchdown. What don't you like about this man? Okay, my whole point about this, because I'm going everywhere. I have a problem with the media and how they try to portray Fields when it comes to his time that he was with the Bears and his time now. Meaning, they're seeing what he did with the Bears and saying, oh, he's about to do the same thing. We've seen this before. That's what Bears fans say. We've seen this before. He'll look good at times, and he'll, like how he fumbled on the
final drive.
Not even the final drive. The one that he fumbled.
The one in midfield.
Oh yeah.
Where he lost it, and
yeah,
it was like a huge sack. They was trying to run away from a defender,
which I thought he was down. I thought he was down when I looked back at it. I thought he was down, but I think that people got to realize that Fields is maturing, and you can see it now in his play. He's not doing as much running now. He's more of a pocket passer than most times, but I don't know. I feel like I'm just going everywhere with Justin Fields. But
so I think we all agree that Justin needs to stay the starter, and I think at least for what we have seen through 4 games, we would like to see what a full body of work is for a full season with Justin Fields at quarterback. To your point, Jawuan, about the media and people comparing Justin to what he did in Chicago to what he's doing now, I don't think that should necessarily be out of bounds. And here's why. We need to see what he's getting better at, and we also need to see what he still needs to improve upon. Has Justin Fields gotten better? I would say absolutely. His completion percentage is almost 10% higher in Pittsburgh than it was in Chicago. His turnover rate is significantly lower in Pittsburgh than it was in Chicago. The amount of times that he took reckless and really bad timed sacks is significantly down in Pittsburgh than it was in Chicago. But with all of this being said, Justin played really, really good in the second half, but he also made costly plays. What does Mike Tomlin always say? We need to do the routine things routinely. And after this game, seeing the mishaps with the snaps, it's starting to get old. And I think we can all agree on this. Listen, how many times did we watch a Steelers game with Ben Roethlisberger? Were we worried about the snap? Never. Because it's a routine thing that we trusted Big Ben to do. It's what franchise quarterbacks do. And I'm not saying just because this is his one flaw, that doesn't make him a franchise quarterback, okay? But the point of the matter is it's something that needs to get cleared up. It's one of the easiest aspects of the game that just needs to get shored up. And is it all on him? No, it's not. I mean, Frazier has some aspects to do with this, but all in all, here's the bad that we saw from him. We saw a lot of good, majority good, but here's the bad, just to play devil's advocate. He trips up on the first play and hands it to Najee, and it's a loss because he misread the snap. He was late. I think I'm almost positive by going back and looking at the film. I watched it multiple different times on this first play, trying to see what happened. Frazier snaps the ball. Fields wasn't ready. Frazier steps on his foot because Fields isn't dropping back in time and in rhythm of the play. Fields is falling down, hands it to Najee. Next, Fields takes 2 really bad sacks in that 2-minute drill in order for us to get 3 points. I would argue to you there might have been an opportunity for us to go and get 7 points if he doesn't take those 2 bad sacks at the very end of that. He had 4 total sacks. The next one is obviously the huge sack. 3rd down, nobody blocks the edge rusher. Instead of throwing the ball away like he should, and like he knows he should, he runs around, scrambles, gets the ball taken out. It's Colts ball. And fortunately, this is something that we probably forgot about, they miss the field goal, the 54-yarder, that would have taken them up by 3 possessions instead of 2. That would have been a 20-3 game, which, again, would have made it much harder to come back from. And then lastly, on the final possession, Fields hikes a leg. Frazier snaps the ball. Fields was still looking at protection and wasn't ready for it. And it's a mishap again, and we're talking about, what was it, 3rd and 22, rather than if they gain a couple yards, like 3rd, 4th and short. Like, it's these things that are costly. Football is a game of inches. And when you see these little minute mistakes and they keep adding up, we saw it in the preseason. We saw it in the beginning of the Atlanta game. We saw it in this Colts game. It's just something that has to get shored up. And we can be excited for what we're seeing with Fields while also wanting these things to get cleared up and for him to be, more proficient into, let's be honest, instead of looking great doing the hard things, let's see him be great and seamless doing the easy ones. And I don't think that criticism should be out of bounds for him, even with him growing each and every game and playing better and better.
I agree with it. Yeah.
Like if we're gonna recognize one, I think we have to recognize both.
I agree too.
I think that should be fair.
Like Mike says, you have to do routine things routinely. He has to do some of those things a little bit better.
Something to carry on with this Colts game that we haven't talked about. One main play that I think cost us the game is the Minka the flag on Minka, the late hit.
I mean, and here's that. We can talk about, a bad call. There's bad calls in every football game. Flat out, the Indianapolis Colts played better than us on Sunday. They were the better team. They came out. They were ready to go. They came out 17-0, moved the ball up and down, set the tone of the game, and we were playing catch up from the beginning. Like, flat out, like, I get it. Could that call have made a change in the game? Yeah, it does. But let's not scapegoat a bad call for a team that came in and is not prepared, which has been a trend for Mike Tomlin teams.
I mean, we've been that's what we've been talking about the whole time. But I'm saying that
because you could argue if Pickens doesn't fumble, if Fields doesn't fumble, we win that game. If Minka doesn't get that call, we win that game. Like, we can go on and on.
What about not taking that field goal after, what was our first possession or second? I feel like it was a 57-yard and Mike Tomlin punted it. I feel like that was another key point in that game.
One thing, I do have a problem with Tomlin. I need him to get out of like Arthur Smith's playbook. Because I feel like he has a hand, especially in the first half. I feel like he has a hand in the playbook that we're not being too aggressive. And like we're
handicapping them a little bit.
Yeah, like we're not.
I think he's trying to play too conservative to not create turnovers, relying on the defense, relying on the run game, playing Steelers football, and coming out with ugly wins. He wants to win. It doesn't matter how pretty it is or what kind of style points that come with it. Mike Tomlin wants to win. At the end of the day, though, what we're seeing is with this team, this isn't Kenny Pickett. This isn't Mitch Trubisky. This isn't even Mason Rudolph. I agree with you that he needs to take the training wheels off. But I also understand where he's coming from with it. But at the end of the day, I think he's been so used to doing this since 2019 when Big Ben hurt his elbow. Because the last time we've had a really good offense, we were the 6th ranked offense in 2018. Had a really good year that year. And since then, we have not been a good offensive team. I just think that he's so used to playing conservative ball that it's hard for him to adapt knowing what we have right now at our disposal on offense. But enough talk about the Colts game. You know, it was a tough loss. Props to the Colts. They came out and played physically. I thought matchup-wise, the Steelers had a clear edge. The Colts were not a good run defense, and they stuffed the run. The Colts in general are just not, in my opinion, a better team than the Steelers. I just think that they came out more prepared, a better game plan, and they were a lot more fired up than this team. But now the Steelers have a major, major game at home, Sunday Night Football against the Dallas Cowboys, who I would argue if the Steelers had a rival in the NFC, this has got to be their one rival in the NFC. Dallas comes to town, always a big game, two of the biggest fan bases in the NFL. Fellas, Dallas is coming in banged up. No Micah Parsons, no Lawrence on the edge for them, and also no Brandon Cooks.
They also got their cornerbacks are both questionable. Diggs and Carson, both questionable. So who knows if they play? They're banged up. That could be big too.
Look,
we're pretty banged up too, though.
I'm gonna start this off. All right, I'm gonna just say this. I'm looking at the camera when I say this. I hate the Cowboys. I despise the Cowboys. I don't like no Cowboys fans. I don't like nothing. What's that? Blue and silver. I don't like none of that stuff. All right. I don't want to hear no excuses. I don't care if Parsons injured. I don't care if Lawrence injured. I don't care if Diggs, the corner. I don't care if Brandon Cooks injured. You suck. All right. You suck. Oh, Jesus. And you will never be better than us. And I don't care how many people are out. You're still not winning. You wasn't winning when you're fully healthy. You're not winning now. All right.
I like it.
Wow.
I like it.
I thought I disliked the Cowboys. I mean,
I don't like the Cowboys either.
I think Jawuan just took the bag there. I think he hates the Cowboys out of all of us. That was a pretty solid rant there. We're gonna have to clip that one. But all in all, I mean that is the headline going into this game is how beat up the Cowboys are. But I don't think people are talking about how beat up we are. We just lost James Daniel. We lost Troy Fautanu. We lost Nick Herbig, who was the starting center throughout all of camp. We're also missing Alex Highsmith. We're missing one of our starting edge rushers as well. So it's not like they're the only ones dealing with edge rusher issues. So
2 of our running backs.
Yeah, they talk about how weak their running back game is. I mean, Jalen Warren and Cordero Patterson, based off what we saw from Jalen last year and Cordero Patterson this year, those are our 2 big play guys. Najee's just our kind of pound and ground guy. I mean, this kid, Aaron Shampklin, am I saying that right? Aaron Shampklin? I mean, he was a substitute teacher for a California school last year, and he's now the number 2 running back on the Pittsburgh Steelers. No discredit to him. I mean, I'm sure he's fine player, but
yeah, that's
at the NFL level, in your substitute teacher last year, I mean, that just kind of goes to show you what kind of dire need at running back that the Steelers are at. So Steelers are banged up too. I don't want to hear any excuses from the Cowboys either. This team has been really, really bad against the run, and they're also one of the worst running teams on offense in the NFL. So This is a game I feel the Steelers should win, and especially coming off a tough loss. Mike Tomlin always plays well coming off a really, really bad loss. The Steelers got beat up against the Colts. I mean, I feel like they kind of got bullied in the Loud House, as Pat McAfee would like to say. Coming back home, Sunday Night Football, Mike Tomlin's record in prime time at home is really, really good. Don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think this is a game that we should win. The Dallas Cowboys have 2 rookies on their offensive line. Cooper Beebe is their starting center. He was a guard for Kansas State. They drafted him, so he didn't even play center in college, and now they're moving him. Their left tackle, Tyler Guyton, they picked him up late in the first round. He's out of Oklahoma. Very raw prospect, not really refined. And then Terrence Steele has the awful assignment of having to go against TJ Watt. Don't really think that he's up to par for that matchup as well. I mean, really outside of their guards, I mean, their offensive line isn't that great as well. So I'm really looking at our defensive line to try and bounce back in this game and dominate this young and inexperienced Dallas offensive line.
In the wise words of Mike Tomlin, we do not care about none of them injuries. I'm just going to say this. Then I'm done off the rant. I'm just going to say this. You still have the highest paid quarterback and the second highest paid receiver still out there active. Do something with it.
And that's where I was gonna go with key matchups would be like our secondary versus CD, our linebackers versus their tight ends. Like he throws his tight ends a lot. They have 2 tight ends that get the ball pretty often.
Jake Ferguson is a very underrated tight end to me.
And that's what I'm saying. Like our linebackers, covering them, they couldn't cover this past game. And if JPJ follows CD, that's going to be another big matchup to see. Our offense versus their defense, I just don't see many matchups. Like GP is going to go against their backup cornerback. If Diggs plays, they'll go against Diggs. That would be a matchup, but I don't know. Like
even if Diggs does play, he's going to be banged up. I mean,
exactly.
He had to get helped off the field with his injury on that Thursday night game against the New York Giants. So. He's not going to be 100%. So
it's one we should win.
Dallas is coming in banged up. I feel really, really confident, but kind of like you were saying, I know Dak Prescott, at times can choke most of the time in the playoffs. I'm not a big Dak Prescott in the playoffs kind of guy, but in the regular season, Dak knows how to light it up. And there are times where Dak has really, really big games and looks really, really good. And this cannot be one of them. Because nobody is scared of Dallas's run game. Nobody is scared of Dallas's offensive line. And to be honest with you, without Brandon Cooks, I think Jalen Tolbert, I think he could be a bit of a surprise. He's been more of a return guy, right. But if you lose focus on him, he's also a big play. I'm looking at the way that our secondary plays CeeDee Lamb and Jalen Tolbert. I think both of these guys are really talented. They can make big plays. I like how you brought up the tight ends. It's really going to be up to the pass rush to get home. And the linebackers at secondary to hold up and not allow these short yardage, middle of the field wide open, these long crossers to develop and to break through. And also, Joey Porter Jr., I know you're rocking Ike Taylor's number. Don't act like him and keep dropping interceptions like you did against the Colts. Like we can't afford that. There's too many opportunities to change the game with a couple interceptions and also that fumble. The Steelers have to turn the ball over and take advantage of the mistakes because Dallas likes to take risk. Prescott throws picks, and they have to take advantage of those opportunities.
I said this last week, and it's going to go another week. George Pickens is getting over 100 yards again. I'm just here to say it again. Nobody can guard this man. Who a banged up Diggs. He's getting 100 yards again. That's all I'm gonna say.
I mean, we need him to. If they open up the offense early, he might. But one thing I wanted to make clear is like a big key to this game is going to be getting to Dak Prescott. They don't have a run game, so we're not too worried about the run game. So TJ Watt and Herbig should be pinning their ears back and getting the deck. That's going to be key. If we have no pressure like we did last week, it could be a long day. Could be a long day for our defense.
What I am worried about, though, is Zach Martin and Tyler Smith. They're those two guards. Those are two all-pro level guards. Cam Hayward, Keanu Benton, Larry Ogunjobi. Guys, I know Cam and Keanu didn't look that bad against the Colts. They still got pushed back on certain plays. You cannot lose this matchup. You cannot. Because if TJ and Herbig are going to want to pin their ears back, like you're saying, Trey, those three guys got to win on the inside. And if you don't, it's going to be a long day. It is going to be a long. If Dak Prescott gets time, Dak's really good at reading pressure. Dak's really good at reading defenses. If you don't make him uncomfortable, that's when he starts to make mistakes, and that is the key. So I know, especially going up against Quentin Nelson last week, and Quentin Nelson's kind of having a resurgence this year. You got to win on the inside. You can't lose on the inside like you did in that game.
So let's just go ahead and get these predictions out the way.
Let's do it.
All right. Jawuan, I'll start with you. You're very animated that the Steelers are going to beat the Cowboys here at home. What is your score prediction?
Well, we're putting up 30.
Okay.
There we go. I see this 30-13. Steelers. 13 points.
I'm right there with you. I'll go 30 with the Steelers. I think the Cowboys will score towards the end too, and Dak will get going a little bit. I think it's going to be, I want to go 30-24.
Okay. I'm going to go Steelers win 24-16. I think the Cowboys sustain some drives. I think the Steelers force them to 3 multiple times. Maybe they throw a touchdown drive in there, but I think the Steelers consistently move the ball. I see us jumping out to an early lead and trying to hold on to that lead throughout the game. I can see us jumping out to an early lead, and Cowboys are kind of playing catch up, and the Steelers are kind of holding out. So I'm going Steelers 24, Cowboys 16. Let's go into our steal of the week. Trey,
a bold one.
You're the man with the odds.
I got a bold one. All right, so the odds are we're 2.5 point favorites. All right, the over-under is 43.5. But my steal of the week is going to be kind of a little bit off the wall, but I think Justin Fields has 2+ touchdowns. That means he has to rush for 2. Rush for 2 or catch him, whatever. But I'm going with Justin Fields scoring 2+ touchdowns. In the red zone, he is an absolute threat, and I think that read option will work against these guys.
All right. Jawuan.
All right. So while I'm over here doing some stuff. All right, so had to cook up a parlay real quick. So this is my parlay. I have, first of all, I'm going to change this. I have Justin Fields going over 250 yards passing. This is a statement game for him. And I think it's a statement game for Najee Harris. So I have Najee Harris going over 60 yards. I also have Pat Freiermuth 25 yards receiving. 25 yards for Justin Fields rushing. George Pickens and Justin Fields get a touchdown.
Okay.
And they cover the spread.
That's a lot. That is a lot.
That's a bunch of steals, dude.
I am going with Najee Harris anytime touchdown score.
He needs one.
I think he does. I think this is a confidence booster for him. I don't think he has a great game, but I think he has a solid game. I think it's like, okay, last week was a bit of a dud. I think he's going to have more of what we saw in the first 3 weeks, but I do think he gets in the end zone this week. And here's a big one. I'm going Justin Fields 50+ rushing yards in this game. I think Justin Fields lets the wheels loose. One of the games the game I decided to watch, or I should say rewatch, was the Cowboys-Ravens game. I felt like that kind of had to be the more comparable one. And I just felt like the way that Lamar was able to move around, that's going to cause trouble for this defense, especially without Micah Parsons and company in here. I think they're going to have a tough time containing Justin Fields in the pocket, and I think part of the game plan is going to be to get him to scramble out and either look downfield or to take off with his wheels and get first downs. I think Justin gets well over 50 yards rushing in this game against Cowboys. Najee Harris, anytime touchdown. So
his rushing is set at 45.5. So
yeah. I think he gets over 50. I did see that, and I thought about going over 45.5, but I wanted to go a little bit more bold. I think he gets over 50 yards. 50 yards.
I'm looking at this too. I want to take one more before we head off. Najee Harris, over on his receiving yards, is at 15.5. I'm going to take the over. I think they're going to try to get him the ball in different ways, get him in space.
They did have that really big screen that, I mean, that was what was that, 50-plus yards that he had?
Put us right in the red zone.
Right in the red zone.
You want to know something? His 25 yards is plus 200.
Whose?
Receiving yards?
Receiving yards for Najee.
That's a lot. I feel like that's a lot for Najee. I wouldn't go 25-plus yards. But 15, I could maybe dabble with that. I still think that is quite a bit because outside of that screen pass, he doesn't have a lot of receiving yards. But anyway, with all that being said, Steelers have a very winnable matchup with a beat-up Cowboys team coming into Pittsburgh. We got to think about it, guys. First 4 games, 3 of 4 on the road. The Steelers are going to start to get some home games. 3 of the next 4, counting this Cowboys game, is going to be at home. Can they take advantage and extend their lead on the AFC North? We will see that Sunday Night Football, NBC, 8:20 Eastern kickoff, 7:20 Central. Stealing with Boys will give you a full recap next week and preview a huge game going out to Las Vegas against the Raiders the following week. With all that being said, Stealing with the Boys podcast, we are out.
Beat them cowgirls.
Here we go.